Um, as you say, we've traveled a lot, done a lot of things. We chose this one for two reasons. One, it's cheap. This was very, very cheap, this whole trip. And later on, if we do that, I can tell you how much. And we were really interested to see what traveling was like in the off season when there's nobody home. And believe me, there's nobody home when you do this kind of. So we'll see some of that as we go through the presentation. We're going to talk about Croatia today. This is a cruise. It has a couple of little bus sidelines because they didn't really fly into anywhere that's on the coastline. So we flew into Zagreb, and then we had to take a bus down to the coast, get on the ship. But we'll talk about that. One change here, and you'll see as we go along, is we're not going to talk about Montenegro because we didn't go there because the weather wouldn't allow. We were on a 50-passenger boat. Think how small that is. And with the weather we had, we could not go that direction in the days that would have required us to do that. So we didn't go. So we skipped that whole part of the tour. I could have gone back to one of my other presentations because we've been there and pulled out the pictures, but I didn't. So no Montenegro, sorry, in this one. Bucket list. How many people ever thought about a bucket list or have one? Anybody ever write it down? We do. We write it down, cross them off, write new ones. Keeps getting longer. Keeps getting harder. The more you travel, the more difficult it gets. As I said, we've been lots of places. We're going to Greenland here this spring, or summer. So don't know if we'll still need our passport then or not, but some of our favorite places. I show this every time, and these really haven't changed. We've done some more traveling, but these are really cool places to visit. And later on, if anybody wants to know what they are, I can tell you. Here's the trip, 16 days. That's the total trip, and that also counts coming and going, your travel days. So it's really only like 14 days on the ground or on the boat. And we rarely do anything that short. That's just not. But once again, this was so cheap, we couldn't afford not to. The company we're going with is called Overseas Adventure Travels, OAT. We've traveled with them a bunch. They always offer pre-trip and post-trips. You see those in the little insets. We didn't do either one of those. We'd been to both places, both of the pre and post. And in our 50 passengers on the ship, there was only one couple that did the post-trip. Nobody else did a pre-trip or a post-trip. And that's really rare when you see that. I'm going to back up 1 second and say, how many people have not been to one of my presentations? Okay, here's how this works. If you've got a question or anything at any time, jump up and down, shout, because we want to answer them when we're there. I'll repeat them for the recording and for the Zoom people, and then away we'll go. But don't wait till the end or do anything or something. And how many people have been to Croatia? Oh man, I love that. I love, because I can say anything now and in a way. Yes. Yeah, that's a cool place. Yeah, Ljubljana or. Oh wow. Yeah, I've read about him and all that. Yeah, cool. Yeah, we've been there, and Lake Bled, it's really another place in Slovenia is really, really famous. So here's the layout. The red stuff is all bus. So fly into Zagreb, spend an overnight, do a tour of Zagreb, take the bus down to Zadar. One of the things you're going to see me today is try to struggle with pronunciations. Okay? I'm going to try to pronounce them like they do, which is not the way we do. And I found that in Croatian, which is the predominant language in Croatia, that they emphasize the first syllable of place names. That's kind of weird for us. We don't do that. We emphasize second or third or something, but like Chicago. It's not Chicago. And so it's really hard for me to say Zadar. And later on when we get to Dubrovnik, that's really hard to say because we're so used to pronouncing it the other way. So blue is the boat trip, and you see that there's kind of all kinds of little overlapping things, and that's because you hit some of them going southbound and then the other ones going northbound. So it looks awfully confusing, and it's even more confusing because we skipped around because of the weather. So we're going to still use this chart as we go because it's got all the places and place names, but we didn't do them in this order, and we didn't do Montenegro. You can't come to one of my presentations without I'm kind of like James Michener, I'm going to start with the rocks and then come forward to tell you what's going on, but you can't really travel in this part of the world without knowing the history of what happened, and the history of what happened here is Yugoslavia. Most of us in this room are old enough to know and have heard of Yugoslavia, and we know what it was. And things you'd be surprised, even in Croatia, there's a bunch of people that the only thing they know about Yugoslavia is what we know. They've heard about it in school, read about it in books, but they don't have any idea about Yugoslavia. But it's really important if you see these, which are now countries, but were republics and areas inside Yugoslavia. And they all, at one point, actually about over a 2 or 3 year period of time, starting in 1991, became countries. And that's really important when you're traveling in this part of the world. It was created like lots of bad things that came out of the Treaty of Versailles after World War I. There was a ton of bad things that were dictated in that treaty, and that's why we ended up with World War II. This was one of them. They created this place called Yugoslavia out of whole cloth by just taking a pencil and doing this. And they being the winners of World War I. One of the guys who fought in that war, then in World War II, brought things to head is Tito. How many people heard of him? Yeah, most of us have heard of him. Very famous guy, of course, in the country, got absolute dictatorial control of the country. Even now, though, it's a love-hate relationship with Tito in Croatia, and we've been to all these other countries. Ginny and I have been to all of them. And there's a bunch of, it's about 50-50, those who think he was a great guy and those who think he was the most awful thing in the universe. It's not cut and dried. And their life before the war and after the war, which is like 1991 to 1994. Go ahead, go ahead, Tom.
Yes, my grandpa didn't like him that much, but the reason he came to the United States because they were so economically, they were peasants, and there was no work and no food, and so that's in the late 1800s, early 1900s. But he always said he held that country together. And then when he died.
Yeah, Tom's comment was his grandfather did not really like this guy. He actually left before he came into power. However, his comments were the comments you hear over and over again, like things were not so bad under, we had stability, we had wages, we knew what things were going to be. Yugoslavia did not use the Soviet model. We all think communists, not communists. Not true. Yugoslavia was totally different than all those others. They were aligned. How they operated was totally different. Dictatorship, yes. Could they travel? Yeah, they could go all over the world. No restrictions on their people. Does that sound like one of the other Soviet countries? Not a bit. So there's a lot of things that you get into when you get into the history and doing the things that make life different in Yugoslavia. He did hold it together, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, why it blew up and did that. Very charismatic. This is an interesting chart here. This is an ethnic breakdown ethnic breakdown of the population. So you have Muslims, you have Albanians, you have Bulgarians, you got Croats. Croats are in yellow. Okay, so we're going to talk about Croats. What's in the kind of the pinkish color there, that's Serbian, that's the Serbs. And Bulgarians are a whole different ethnic race. So this is part of the problem trying to hold this place together. These people have hated each other for 10,000 years. You know, I mean, this is the world. This is the way the world is. Okay, so trying to hold that together was tough. They had a strong guy, he did it. Nobody stepped out of line. They did that. So it was really good for the whole area. This is the religious breakdown in that area of the world. And you see that, yeah, kind of interesting, isn't it? Croatia is 95% Catholic, not just you know, Christian, 95% Catholic. Serbia, of course, is still Muslim. Kosovo, Albania is in there somewhere, and there are a bunch of Albanians and a little Muslim and a little mix of things. This is another reason you had this big conflict once there was no central leader to keep these people from fighting each other. So Tito died, okay? And this is what, he died in 1980. And it didn't break up immediately. It didn't happen overnight. But all this fomenting conflict between the ethnic groups and the religious groups started to bubble, and there was nobody to tamp it down. And what happened? And so the Serbs saw themselves as the leaders of the whole area. They have about double the population of everybody else in sheer numbers. And they've historically been the rulers of that whole area, been the Serbian people. Then in 1989, what happened? The Berlin Wall came down, which signaled the breakup, dissolution of the Soviet Union. And that then said to all these people, well, we can do that. And so they started really talking about it, thinking about it. That's when it really started, 1989. The first two people to say we're gone, Slovenia and Croatia, saying we're out of here. Who said not so fast? The Serbs and things. So then we have this war that started in Croatia. They call that the Homeland War. Of course, everybody, no matter wherever you're at in that whole area, you have a different name for it, depending on which side and who is shooting who in your town. But they call it the Homeland War in Croatia. This is a little layout that shows you a little better idea, a little better map than the one that OAT has of where things are located. You can see that Croatia is really a funny shaped country. This kind of blob up at the top and then a big sea, long, narrow stretch down the coastline. What's wrong with that long stretch down the coastline? Who now can't get to the water? Bosnia, Herzegovina, and Serbia. Who doesn't like that idea? Bosnia, Herzegovina, and Serbia. So this is another huge factor. Why is that long strip down there? Anybody idea? Anybody study history and know this kind of crap? Venetians. Back in the time when the Austro-Hungarian Empire controlled everything, they didn't control the coastline. The coastline was controlled by the Venetians for that whole period of time. So the forts, the structures, the architecture, predominantly, and the things we're going to see, Venetian from the time. And that's why the long stretch, a lot of the things, because the Venetians never lost control of that until about the 1800s. So they were there a long time. All right, we don't need to go through too much of this. 91, it started. It's now, though, a couple things from the bottom. They do have a parliamentary form. The 18th most popular tourist spot in the world. Now think about that. That's a pretty high number. That's a pretty high number. When we were there, it was number 280 in the world. There was nobody there, no tourists. So, and we'll talk about, because we've been there in June, July, and we know the difference. I can tell you the difference. So they joined the EU in 2013. Anybody know what the Schengen countries are? Heard of those? Inside the EU, there's a group of countries, I'm not sure if it's 12 or 13 now, a group of countries that are all contiguous, and they're called the Schengen countries. There's going to be a note on that somewhere in here. What that means is if you're inside that group, when you enter one country, you've entered them all. No passports, no showing, no crossing customs, no crossing passport control, no anything. So big deal when you're traveling in that part of the world. This is a picture not from this year. This is our last trip. This was from our hotel room on the last trip, 2017. Just take a look at this and you're going to see a bunch of differences. One later on is snow. And that cathedral, see the cathedral there in the left third of the picture? That cathedral is now 100% scaffolding, as are 70% of the other tall buildings in Zagreb from an earthquake in 2020. Nearly wiped out some of the most impressive, biggest buildings in Croatia. So this picture doesn't look like this now because of the scaffolding. So that's why I put this one in there. This is the picture on our last day. When we came back on the last day of the tour, we leave the next day. We fly out the next day. This is the view out our hotel room. Slightly different. Scaffolding all over but they got between 6 and 10 inches of snow in Zagreb the day before we came back there from the ship. That's the most snow they've got in 16 years. Welcome to Croatia. You know, lucky us, huh? All right, here's pardon me. Language. The question from Tom is, what language do they speak in Croatia? And the answer was what? Croatian, okay? What about English? Yes, everybody, almost. After 1992, when they declared their independence, and then they really got cranking as a country in about 1995. Took them 2 or 3 years to get a currency, government estate, they had none of those things. They had to start from scratch. But as soon as they did, starting in the 4th grade, they started studying English. So every school you had to study, because they recognize English is the language of what? International money and business, commerce. If you're going to do international commerce, you got to speak English. They knew that, started teaching everyone English. Now they start in kindergarten. So nearly everyone speaks English. The older people, not as much. If you're over, say, 40 years old, probably don't. Anybody under 30 years old, they all do. They all speak English. I'm going to have to zip through these slides, or we'll be here till next Monday, because I have a bunch of slides. So I'm going to just pop through the slides. The interesting thing is I take all these because it's just jaw-dropping to us, no matter where we travel, where people have been living since the 10th and 11th century, what the architecture is like, what the buildings are like. Everywhere you look, you're just impressed by the buildings. So I have a lot of pictures of buildings you're going to be throwing up by the end of this thing, looking at these pictures of buildings. And so I'm not going to leave them on the screen very long, or we'll be here too long. So if anybody sees something they want to know more about, scream out, and we'll go. The reason these pictures are in here is because I just like the looks of the building. If there's some other reason that we should care about this building, then there'll be more than one picture. Okay?
What was the month that you were there? Was it just this last December?
Yes. The question was, what month were we there? We left here on the 27th of December and got back on the 13th of January. So believe me, the last slide in this presentation was done this morning because Florence gives me no time on these things to get ready. So So I'm operating under the gun all the time. Answer? Okay. Forward.
Wow.
Yeah, look at that building. I got one of that later on in the snow. Because this was we were in Zagreb for 2 days when we started and 2 days when we finished. Okay, so these pictures are the days when we started. No snow, no this, no that. Cold, yeah, like here today, 24, 25 degrees. That's cold for them. That's really cold. They're not used to that. The buildings?
Yeah.
Yes. We went inside the ones we could. And we'll talk, we were right over the holidays, right over the New Year's holiday and things, and we're still in Advent season. Now, remember, this is what, 95% Catholic? What's the last day of Advent? Catholics, January 6th, All Kings Day, right? January 6th, so nothing comes down. All the Advent places, the decorations, nothing comes down till January. So in Zagreb, which is 700,000 people, things are rocking. You get out in a town of 40,000, nothing moving. So, we could not go into a lot of these buildings. They were not barring us. They just weren't closed. They were closed because of the holiday, Christmas holidays. Oh yeah, the Opera House is in what? Opera House, and we've been inside, but I didn't put very many of my last visit's pictures in here because I didn't want to get confused going back and forth. Plus, all the pictures I have from then are in short sleeves and shorts, and so that's not really appropriate for what we did this time. But there's a lot of these buildings we could not get in. Yeah, it's a good question. Didn't get a chance to, but we've been in them, Ginny and I.
Did they still have all these vegetables?
Yes, and now one of the things to think about here is maybe 100, 150 miles further south along the coastline, you're in temperate city. There's palm trees everywhere you go in Croatia on the coast. The weather we had was obnoxiously cold for the time. Now in Zagreb, no, it's interior, right? But on the coast, they grow everything and it's much more temperate than this. And they had all this stuff. Yeah, and this is the thing that amazes you, not European, every kind of country that relies on open markets. They have grocery stores, supermarkets, nobody goes. I mean, the people that live in apartments, they'll walk down and get a few things. They do their shopping at the market. And it's just awesome stuff. Everything is awesome. And I found relatively cheap. I do the shopping for us, Jenny and me. I'm the designated shopper. So I know all the prices of everything. And their prices are really good. Really, really good. Some things were some manufactured goods and some clothings and boots and things like that were on the high end for us. Staples, less than we're paying.
What currency did you have?
Currency in Croatia is the euro. They joined the European Union in 2013, but that doesn't mean you have to do the euro when you join the European Union. There's a bunch of members of the European Union don't use the euro. If you're a Schengen country, you have to use the euro. So when they joined Schengen in 2023, they had to change their currency to the euro. So we use euros. Okay. You guys like staying until Saturday or something. This is our first night. We arrived in the afternoon, took a couple-hour nap because we were dead from the flight. It's about 9.5, 10 hours from Chicago to Zagreb on the thing. But the Christmas market's still going. So we had a lot of fun walking around that night, Christmas decorations. Our hotel was right downtown. OAT, Overseas Adventure Travel, does that. They try to get you a hotel where you can walk and get to stuff. So again, out our window, that's a last visit, not the first day. That one in the lower right is the last day visit. That's the cathedral in the snow with the scaffolding. Singularly unimpressive. And that later on, I'm going to have a picture of the real cathedral. So, I mean, that we took in 2017. So you can see what it really does look like. Oh, that's a good photo. Who put that one in upside down or sideways or something like that? Florence, look what you're doing to me. Gee whiz. Anyway, these are things to see. National Theater of the Arts. Look at that building. Closed. Can't go in. Can't watch. Nothing's open. We did have a Jack Daniels Christmas tree tower there, though. The barrels, I thought that was pretty impressive. And in one of the Christmas market areas and a booth selling shots of Jack Daniels. There's a little short, the one that's on sideways. If you look sideways, Ginny's in a tunnel. That was an air raid tunnel from World War II. And now it connects the upper city and the lower city. The shortcut to things. So this is probably my biggest memory from 2017. Didn't look like this in 2017, and I didn't include a 2017 picture. This is St. Mary's Church, St. Mark's Church, excuse me. And the guy who built this is 1902. It's not old, because the old church that was in this spot was totally destroyed by an earthquake, 1880s, 1890s. Built this, but the roof are custom tiles, ceramic tiles, and they have the flags and the crest and the blue and red and yellow. Now this is kind of the kind of day we had. We had a couple really nice days in Dubrovnik, but this day was kind of crummy and gray, so you don't get a good feeling for how bright and cool that is. And the doorway is the original doorway, carved wood from 1350. And this is the kind of stuff that always amazes me. You're walking around, go through that wooden piece is still there in the doorway from 1350. And the thing, I mean, wow. St. Mark's. What happened to this thing? I think something went into autocorrect in my, I would not put those things in sideways like that. But anyway, these are things walking around. You see in the little markets, this white stand in the top center row is there are whole city parks full of these things for the Advent festivals. And all different style. This one has this thing they call fritules. They're just donut holes. That's what we would call them, donut holes. They're a little bigger. They're maybe 2 inches across. Some of them are filled with chocolate. And then you can get whatever on top you want. They have sprinkles and chocolate and powdered sugar. And people are wolfing these by the gallon down there. And our tour guide bought these for us, and she got only the powdered sugar because she didn't want to fight over who got what on the thing. And it was snowing a little bit, so the powdered sugar didn't show on the thing. So that was fun. And then I love markets. I take, every time you see thinking I'm in a new place, if there's a market, I'm taking pictures. And I would love to live in a place that had meat markets and fruit and vegetable markets like these people have. It is just unbelievable. Yes, yeah, this is very much a local type thing. In Zagreb, a little less so, a little more middlemen in the Zagreb. But all the other places we visited, it's the farmers themselves that are there in the market, not just bringing their stuff to give to someone else. They're the ones with the stalls, with the things. In Zagreb, there are middlemen because it's too big, too big. There are some shops that are not. And, we had guys that pointed these things out. Now, that's the Opera House again in the upper right-hand slide. Opera House in the background and about 200 people skating in a big ice skating rink in front of it. They did need a bigger rink. And there were, as in most cases, there were kids out there trying to kill everyone, skating, And so it was kind of fun to watch. The two slides in the top row, the top left and the middle one, are the last day in Zagreb. I didn't put 2 days worth in Zagreb. I combined them all into one. That was our place we found. That's called Mali Meadow. It is a beer bar, craft beer bar. They make their own, been open since 1994, craft beers. And then the reason I put this in is that lunch we had there, that was on our last day, is called cevapici. If you only learn one word there in Croatian or Serbian or Bulgarian or Bosnia-Herzegovina, because the word's the same in all those places. Cevapici, little sausages. Little sausages. So everywhere you go, you can walk into any restaurant, and say cevapici, and out it'll come. Almost always with French fries or pommes frites and things, and they are great. They are really, really good. In the bottom row there, the thing that's in the middle there, and the reason I put this in is we're at a place called the Esplanade Hotel Christmas Market or Advent Market. Esplanade Hotel. It was one of the middle stations of the Orient Express. So the Orient Express, during its heyday, the place it stopped mid-route and let their people get real service was at the Esplanade Hotel. And they had their own Advent fit-in. It was all rail car and Orient Express style booths all around the courtyard. So kind of fun.
It's just like a painting.
Yeah, well, it is a painting. It's painted on the front of the booth, you know. So, yeah. And, but, whoa, back up. There's the cathedral. That's our picture from 2017. Okay. And of course, you can't go in it now. You can't go in St. Mark's Church now, even though it was not damaged. You can't go in because it has some structural damage. They're still working on it. Many, many of these big buildings you can't go in Zagreb. Okay, couldn't go in this, and it's covered with scaffolding. But I put this in because you need to see what the real thing looks like and how beautiful it is. This is inside. Of course, you can't do that now, but this is all, these are 2017 photos. So then we leave Zagreb, we hop on our handy dandy bus. Now remember, we got two groups of 25 people because the boat will hold 50. Two groups of 25, two buses, two full-size buses, 25 people in each bus. That's comfortable traveling. You don't mind traveling on a big bus with 25 people. So it was really, and that's, OAT does that. That's really nice. We're taking that red route down up from Zagreb down to Zadar. There's our boat. Little Miss Athena, OAT owns 3 of these exactly the same. If they painted out the name, there's no difference whatsoever between all the 3 of them, and they all work the coastline of the Mediterranean. They don't ever go out into the Med because they're a little too small to do any of that stuff. So they're all coastline kind of thing. All right, this thing's really screwed up. Man. Okay, I didn't do all this stuff because the one that's in the top middle was in the bottom left when I did this slide. You know, cock your head around, see if you can figure out what these things are. This is in the town of Zadar, walking tour about sunset. So we're there walking around. We did about 2 hours. So most of our walking tours are around 2 hours. So, you know, you're out there a while. Things to note here is the St. Metis Church is, maybe 1250. It was decided. Anastasia Cathedral, 1370. These are amazing. Can't go in. They're all locked up, you know, because time. Pillar of Shame. We saw 3 or 4 instances of very similar things like this. This Pillar of Shame's in the middle of the courtyard from the Roman times. Where this church is, where in the one picture in the bottom left that's screwed up, that's sideways, that's the Roman Forum courtyard. That's where those things are sitting. The Romans were here in 3 AD. This pillar is from 3 AD. And there's a place for handcuffs up here. You can kind of see the little dark spot about 1/3 of the way up that pillar. That's where the handcuffs would be. And they put you in this pillar and you're out there for a day or two at a time while the people mock you. You know, it's kind of like the stocks, throw stuff at you. And there's something like that I'm going to see if this works. Let's see here.
Why did they call it Pillar of Shame?
Because it was intended to. Why did they call it the pillar of shame? Because they wanted to shame the person who had committed the offense. They want to bring shame on them. So they bring them up there and people can taunt them and make fun out of them and say, oh, look at John. What did he do? Type of thing. I don't think this is going to work. Something happened to my program here. Nope.
Why couldn't you go into that church, the old one?
The question is, why couldn't you go in the churches? Because they're all closed and locked up. And the answer is, this time of the year, this time of seasons, they're only open during times of service. If this was the tourist season, where there were guides and there were people and there were monitors out there, they would probably be open. But this time of year, all those people are gone. Anybody that works in the church, all the local people who guide, they're all gone. They're gone on vacation. They're gone celebrating the holiday. So everything's closed. And the reason this thing that says audio of the sea organ, and I tried to put this in, it worked on my computer. Of course, this thing now has shifted my slides all up, so I have no idea what's coming up. But the sea organ was designed by a guy 50 years ago, and it uses plastic pipes out into the sea. He figured out what the currents is. He put different sized pipes, and it plays music like an organ. So you're standing there. If you see there's not even one on this page now. Let me go one further. Nope. Not here. It's gone. The slide's gone. That shows you what it actually looks like. It steps down and there's little openings, 230 feet long. This thing's 230 feet long. Little openings where the sound comes out. The more the waves are operating, the louder and the more variation in the sound. And you can stand there. When we were standing there and it's just playing music. It was really cool. And I tried to embed this thing, and somewhere the machine didn't like my drive, and so that's why things are screwed up. We had to run a autocorrect thing, and it did what it wanted. So here we are. This is in the actual center of the city of Zadar. Again, everything's on its side there, a lot of the things. You can get a pretty good idea. There's a little tourist train that's running along. There's big, and you can see how few people. Nobody. There's nobody there when we're doing this. And then the one in the middle at the bottom, there's a national drink of Dalmatia. Well, Dalmatia is not a country. Dalmatia is the coastline region of Croatia. That's Dalmatia. And Dalmatia likes to compete with Michigan because they grow cherries. And the most famous cherries are maraschino cherries. The most famous liquor, the national liquor of Dalmatia, is maraschino. That's the name of it, and it's clear. So in that glass that you see there, we stopped after our walking tour in a little local restaurant and got a glass of maraschino. No, it's a kind of a schnapps, but not sweet. And you better be a magician to note if it tastes like cherry. Now they make a red version. That's not it though. They make a red version for who? Foreigners. Yeah, well, I want it sweet and I want it to look like cherries. And well, yeah, here. But this is the real one. This is the one that they drink, and it's what the thing. The next day, we took a trip. This is a thing that OAT does, and they call it a day in the life of. And you have one of these on at least one of these on every trip, depending on the length of it. And they take you out somewhere, usually to a farm. We've been to one of the reasons I did one on honeybees is we went to a honeybee farm and things. We've gone to vineyards. We've gone to olive farms and olive presses. This is a village of 300 people that was almost wiped out in the war, homeland war of the things, and they're still trying to survive as a village like they were in medieval times. It's all cooperative. They work together. They do things. They have small acreages. They raise all their own everything. Wood. And now, some of them, like this place here, has supplementary heaters, the one we went to, because he's one of the more wealthy individuals. And he has, he has modified his place to attract tourists from Europe, not the US. People in Europe trying to get out. He has a swimming pool in the backyard. So not just obviously not when we're there. A swimming pool things, and he's got a guest house, and it's full all summer. And this is us. We pull up in this bus. That's their house on the top left, the white. The others are remnants. Most of these buildings are abandoned. The whole rest of the town is only about 120 people out of 300 that still live there now. So they are really scrambling to survive. No school, have kids, no school, so the kids have to be bused out and away. And so this is part of we get their story, how they're trying to survive. That's a day in the life of. Ah! Okay, if you see the top row of pictures there, the second one in from the left is every place you go, and this happened to us everywhere you go, whether it's a home, a business, a thing, the first thing they do is give you a glass of rakia. Rakija. J's in Croatian are Y, pronounced Y, so it's rakia. It's kind of like, anybody know what grappa is? Ever heard of grappa from Greece? It'll kill you. It's awful. Well, that's the base of all of these things is grappa, and then they infuse them with other things. And the part where we were at, in this part of Croatia, they like to use two things, walnuts and honey. There's a lot of walnut trees. They grow their own walnuts, and of course, they're maintaining bees. So you get walnut or honey flavored rakia. So you show up, first thing you do, everywhere you go, get used to it, shot of rakia. The thing there in the bottom row middle was on its side. That's what they call cooking under the bell. And it's got a big lid that has a rim on it, and you put hot coals and ashes on that and lower it onto the food like a dome, and it cooks that way. And then you have ashes, things around the bottom on the thing. And they call it cooking under the bell. And the food that comes out is called pika, P-I-K-A. And it's whatever meat they use. They happen to use pork this day. So they have pork and potatoes and carrots and cabbage all in there at the same time under the bell, cooking under the bell. And so that's what we ate. That plate you see lower right, that's what comes out. That's what comes out from under the bell. Then we had, of course, with the meal, you have wine because what? They make their own wine. Everybody makes their own wine. Everybody makes their own rakia. Everybody makes their own wine. So you have their wine. You have this. Everything that we ate, they grew there on their place. Everything that's there. And drank. Everything we drank. Our job, and the thing is, when you do it, okay, excuse me.
Digesting that type of food, did you have, were you okay by it?
Yeah, I didn't know anybody on the whole trip that had a problem with anything. There's a bunch of people that just couldn't do rakia, so more for the rest of us. And same thing with the wine, and later on there's some foods people wouldn't eat, so more for the rest of us. Yes, but no, absolutely. This is so bland because it's all cooked together. Now, they use not dried spices, fresh spice, oregano, rosemary, things in there. but that's a much milder infused flavor than the other one. So it has some flavor, but it is not spicy. It's not,
It looks like plain as in death.
no, it's like your home cooking grandmother's roast beef dinner. Absolutely like a roast beef dinner. Where was I gonna? Oh, when you do a day in the life of, they always give you tasks to do when you're doing that. So we had people peeling potatoes. We had, people making bread. We made bread for the meal. Had people making bread. I'm on move the firewood because somebody, how do they heat? Where is it cooked? It's wood. Where they cook and stuff also has a vent into the house. That's their smokehouse. Everybody has a smokehouse. I'll show you an example of one of those later. Really cool and really good stuff. So we moved 15 wheelbarrows of wood. Yes, yeah, we make bread just like we make bread. Yeah, it's just like we make, and it's really good bread. Everything we had is really good, but not gourmet. You know what I'm saying? This is farm food. Just like those of us who grew up on farms or near farms, this is farm food that our parents would recognize in a minute. The flavors are exactly the same on the thing. We're not getting out of here till Sunday now. We've already skipped Saturday. All right, we're leaving. Finally, for crying out loud, we are leaving Zadar and we're going to Split. We've been there before. Again, this is not my photo, but I put this in there with several of one of these like this in there so you can see what the places look like. And think, this is the second biggest city in Croatia after Zagreb, Split. The reason you go to Split is because of Emperor Diocletian. Because Emperor Diocletian built his retirement community in Split. He was born in Croatia, became the Emperor of Rome. When he retired, he moved back to Split. That's why you come here. UNESCO World Heritage Site, visited by how many cruise ships a year? You want to be here exactly the time we were here to see that, to see Diocletian's palace. We're going to do that. If you want to eat and drink, forget it. Bring your own, because everything's closed. Everything's closed. That's, again, center view is not my photo, or the top left. That's to give you an idea how big what Diocletian's palace was like. All that stuff inside the wall in center photo was his original palace in 300 AD. Not 300, 3 AD. Excuse me, a couple centuries off. Yeah, it's when you look at a lot of these medieval towns, they all look like that. And that's because it didn't look like that when Diocletian lived there. There were about 1/10 the number of buildings. The buildings were big, but only 1/10 the number, because it's him and his entourage. Now there's 30,000 people, and in the Middle Ages, from the 10th century to the 19th century, they built all those houses inside the compound. So the inside is a medieval city built on top of and using Diocletian's structure and buildings. So that's why it looks like that. There's 4 gates, uniquely named north, south, east, west. These are all my pictures now. You can see how dreary and kind of thing it is, even though it's not a bad day. But all this stuff's, the things here are all a couple thousand years old, so. The only original Roman non-disturbed site in the place is in the bottom middle. That's where you enter the palace. When you enter it, you enter through a door that goes into that, and that's the basement. That was the basement, and it's absolutely 100% the way it was when Diocletian lived there. So it's the only part that hasn't been modified over the years. But you can get an idea what the rest of these places, and really that's no tourists. We were here before, and to get pictures like that with no tourists in front of the stuff, never happening. I mean, we're talking a mob. There's lots of different architectural styles and architectural materials throughout the course of this. Bronze doors, sphinxes, or whatever the plural of sphinx is. There's 12 sphinx in the castle. So that's one of the trivia things you do when you're there is you walk around, try to find all 12. And you can see that a lot of these columns were from all different time periods way in the past. A lot of them are Egyptian, 2,000-3,000 BC. He got them and moved them into his palace. There's a bunch of these mosaics still in place. The top right gives you an idea of how this was all modified. You got the original window doorway and then 3 different medieval levels built out from that. So you can see how it's been modified over the years. His mausoleum's the biggest building remaining from the original time. You can see the roof's kind of like the Pantheon in Rome. This is all concrete and stone with the open portico in the top. Two things kind of interest here. I take picture of this normal people's laundry day. Here we are in the middle of Diocletian's palace, and there's laundry hung out. I mean, that's pretty normal. Cathedral we were there on a Sunday. There was a service going on in the cathedral. So would have been able to go in, except there was a service going on. So we couldn't go in. And one of the most interesting things to me is in the lower left, that lower left picture looks like nothing totally. Yeah, I mean, the picture itself, you would say, why in the world would you take that picture? That was the spigot, the end of the aqueduct that served this whole area. So that whole aqueduct ran in and ran there out of that pipe. And that's where you would go to collect water from the aqueduct to this place. So I thought that's really good. And then you went to see Bishop Berrigan's birthplace. Well, this is Bishop Gregory there in the lower right. He's from the 10th century, all right? And he is the first person to battle Rome about using local language for the service. So he was adamant, and he said, in Croatia, we're using Croatian. And they did. And they didn't pound him down. So he was the first one to institute using a language other than Latin in the Mass. All right. This is, I do, because I can't stand not to be doing something all the time. I had another tour. When our tour ended at 12 o'clock, walking tour, 2-hour walking tour, 2.5. I had another tour set up with a group called Tours by Locals to go to a town 10, 15 miles away called Trogir. UNESCO World Heritage Site, medieval city, a couple of something. So Ginny and I and a tour guide went. And these are the pictures. That's not my picture, the one in the top left, but that shows you what Trogir looks like. Like a lot of other of these island or peninsular cities, it's just beautiful when you're standing off and looking at it. It's got its own 16th century fortress, monastery. This originally was a government tradesmen's union building. It's now the elementary school at the bottom right. That's their elementary school on the island. Interesting thing about this, I'm just going to let you look at the pictures and thing, but Ginny and I are standing at the main gate to the inner city. That's the main gate to enter the inner city. The interesting thing is we were standing on the moat. There was a moat all the way around the city, and there was a drawbridge where that door is. And that drawbridge went up at 7 o'clock. It came down at 7 in the morning. It went up at 7 o'clock at night on the money. If you were outside, there's no other way in. You're not getting in. So this little picture on the top right, the loggia, they call it, that's where you slept. That's just an open air thing with a covered roof, and you went in there and slept, and 7 the next morning, you can get up and you can go in the city. But they had a covered place for you to sleep. So a lot of people evidently didn't make it, didn't make curfew. And you walk around in these places, look how many people we saw. We walked around in here for an hour and a half. Ginny and I and our tour guide, we saw 2 other people in this whole UNESCO World Heritage something. Unbelievable. This is in itself a UNESCO World Heritage Site inside the city. St. Lawrence Cathedral, it doesn't really show up in there. You got to be standing there and look at these sculptures to get a feeling for how wonderful and intricate and everything they are. And then this is a window, the picture on the right. Can anybody see what that's a carving of? Two snakes eating a woman. Two snakes eating a woman. Each one of the snakes has one of the legs. Now, you tell me why a Catholic cathedral has a window with two snakes eating a woman in the thing. I mean, that's interesting to me. That more medieval city. When you're there, you're just amazed. You walk around these corners and you see these sites and you say, wow, it just, it strikes you. It's just like it was. And on the way back, we're going back to the ship. We were sailing at some time, and so we had to get back. She says, let's stop for 15 minutes at this Roman amphitheater. Okay. So we pull over in this little town, only one's there, no other car, nobody else, and we walk around in the Roman amphitheater, from the 2nd century AD. Seats 17,000 people, which they figure now the population to support that was 60 to 70,000 people lived somewhere right around that amphitheater at that time. All gone now. That day, 28, 29. Yeah, not bad. There's a couple days later on where we had some 23 and wind. Well, it was a couple of cold days out there when you're doing a 2-hour walking tour. We had a couple of days. This was very comfortable.
Amphitheater.
Question is, what would they have in the amphitheater and all the things they had in the Roman Colosseum? They had chariot races, they had gladiatorial games, they had sports competitions, they had pageants, plays, anything that you wanted the people to be able to see. Yeah. Cool stuff. I mean, you know me, I do a lot of research when I'm looking to go. I had no idea there was a Roman amphitheater anywhere close to where we were going to be. Bonus. On the ship, away we go, not to Montenegro. Okay? So instead of going to Montenegro, we're going to go to Dubrovnik. Dubrovnik. Not Dubrovnik. Dubrovnik. Anybody been? No, you guys haven't been to Croatia. You need to go to Dubrovnik. You don't matter if you go anywhere else in Croatia. You need to go here. One, it's a setting for Game of Thrones. Anybody watch Game of Thrones? And two, it's the most well-preserved medieval city out there. Again, once again, not Venetian. This is purely Croatian city, developed to be the second major trade hub on the Mediterranean. Huge, huge power, huge commercial power. They bribed their way out of being overtaken by the Austro-Hungarians, by the Venetians. They had so much money, they just paid them off and said, we'll give you all this money if you don't kill us. Okay. And they took the money. And so, but there's this little thing called the Homeland War, which almost destroyed this place. So we'll talk a little bit about it. There's a picture there's a cable car that goes up the hill. That's the view from the cable car, walled city, beautiful walls. Now, and I'll do a little background, this is mostly developed in the 12 and 1300s. So this city was in the 12 and 1300s. It was there before, but it really became a city at 12 or 1300s. And on and on and on. It never faded into the thing. So you get this view here, and the walls were really sturdy, but they were never attacked. Nobody ever attacked them because they bribed them. Population's 40,000 of everybody, not inside. Everybody of all the surrounding. Everybody makes their living off tourism. Everybody. So it's, and when we were there, I have a separate tour scheduled here with a different tour company. And I said, and this was on like January 1st. something like that when we were there. I said, "You gonna work?" He says, "I'm working. There's nobody here. If I can get a job, I'm going, no matter what day." So they were, there's our tour guide, Nika. And these are views inside. Now, again, we've been there with a few thousand of our closest friends on a big cruise ship when we were there. They have, on the average, every day, 15,000 cruise passengers in port. On the average day. Every day, 15,000. We had 4, not 1,000, 4 people. No, I mean, there was nobody in the place. They do a metering system on the walls because you got to walk the walls. And Ginny and I found out that walking the walls 7 years after you did the first time, not quite as easy. But you got to walk the walls. They're metered in and out now. You go in, you get a ticket bing, you go in the computer. They reach, I don't know what their number is, 1,500, 2,000 people on the wall. When they reach that, 1 in, 1 out. Nobody else gets on the wall till somebody leaves. Otherwise, just too crowded, too dangerous. They have five medical teams up on the walls in the high season spread out around because people are fainting all the time. It's hard work. And they faint and then they got to figure out how to get them off the wall to do this. So you can see how there is no one home in this place. These are the walls, walking the city walls. Beautiful, gorgeous views. That castle in the upper right-hand photo, that's one of the sites in Game of Thrones. We went over there too. Look at the view on the city wall. This is what they look like. That's the North Tower again from a different angle, the one on the right-hand photo. That's the castle that sits across the bay. Okay, who wants to pronounce that? Lovenianak. Yeah, it's a nice castle too. The only reason to go over there though is to view back to Dubrovnik. Okay, this is, I can't read my things here. Okay, this is what I thought. It hasn't screwed me up on this one so much, but the series of 4 photos standing in one place on the wall, looking out. This island's 1 mile off the coast of Dubrovnik. And this is a distant view, and then we'll come in. 4 steps in. It's just regular Saltillo tile, clay tile. Now, one of the stories here, I'll just leave on this, the second one. If you look really closely, you can see some tiles that look more yellowish than orange. Can anybody see that? Like right here. A little more yellow. And some of these look more variegated. See, there are 2 colors in here, yellow and orange. The original tiles were yellow. Look how many are now orange. That's from the Homeland War. This place was by Serbia, bombed and bombed and bombed by Serbia. In order to get their UNESCO World Heritage Site back, they had to replace all these tiles that were destroyed with original tiles. In other words, they had to be tiles from the 12 and 1300s. So they put out a word all over Croatia, said, please donate your tiles to us. And they did. And the tiles came in from all over Croatia to let them redo the city and reclaim their UNESCO World Heritage. So isn't that a great story? I mean, from other medieval cities, there's every city in Croatia, especially on the coast, is all a medieval city. They all have the same, they tore off theirs and put new tiles on theirs because like Trogir, that little town that we were in, it's a UNESCO World Heritage, so they can't give their tiles away. But all these other places we went to are not, okay? So they can give their tiles away and it doesn't hurt them at all. They can put a new replacement tile that looks exactly the same as the old tile, probably more functional. And now, once again, you got to remember, they didn't give them these tiles. Croatia got millions and millions of support from around the world to rebuild this place. They had millions and millions of dollars to rebuild it because nobody wanted this place to go away. Closer, I mean, the buildings and the architecture and the views are unbelievable. And then you can actually see that. Look how many people are in the courtyard, like 4. You know, I mean, it's crazy. If you want to go up to the steps or up and down, this is what it takes. Yeah. And that's just one set. When you get to the walls, then it's like this. And the north, it's 480 steps up to the top of the North Tower. Now, 480 doesn't sound like a lot, but you take off and start walking up 480 steps and doing that. So Ginny and I only made it 3/4 of the way around. We did not do the North Tower this time. We started right here on the North Tower, went all the way around, 3/4 of the way around, right where the wall started to go up to the North Tower. We said, no, thank you. And we went down. Couldn't do it. I mean, we couldn't do it. Now we didn't want to. We were out of airspeed and ideas, as we like to say in the Air Force. A lot. And that's only one section. Now, the other bad thing is, how many steps is it down? 480. Okay, what's just as hard as going up 480 steps? Going down. You want to figure out how bad your shins and knees are going to hurt? Just go down 480 steps. Much harder, much, much harder to go down on your body.
Looks like 7-Eleven steps.
No, you know what I'm saying on that too. But we did it, most of it. Saint Blaise, patron saint of Dubrovnik. Cathedral, couldn't go in, it's closed. The only 2 places you could really go in, St. Francis Cathedral, you could go in, and then the Rector's Palace, which is really cool. Right? I got a bunch of pictures of the Rector's Palace. Now, these pictures, the interior pictures of the cathedral, 2017. Yeah, couldn't go in, not allowed to go in. Well, we're not allowed, it's closed.
All the time?
No, just during the winter, this part of the winter season. There's, same reason I said before, there's nobody to man the gates. They charge, I don't know, 2 euros, 3 euros. It's some small amount of euros to get in. There's nobody to do that. There's nobody to make sure people don't damage the things and do bad things. There's nobody available to do that. They're all gone. These are all things. Those interior shots are from 2017. These are not. These are shots from this trip, all inside St. Francis Monastery. I love these illustrated manuscripts. They just amaze me when you see these illustrated manuscripts. 1250 AD, and if you see the artwork and the detail in those things, of course, that's what they did. This monastery is probably one of 3 buildings back then, and all the monks, that's all they did. Not this one, but there were others you could. Yeah, not this one. These are for those of you who are not as big a Game of Thrones fans as I am. When we were there in 2017, we took a regular tour and then we took a Game of Thrones tour to the Game of Thrones site. This is the view from the other fort. So if you're standing in the other fort, looking back at Dubrovnik, this is what you see. I mean, it's just a beautiful place. This is the Palace Museum, Rector's Palace Museum. I probably could have taken 200 pictures because I just really interested in all this stuff. These are examples of things that you really don't see that much. The crucifix there, 1438, painted on wood, really amazing painting. The thing in the lower middle there, this is one thing I found to be really great. Same year, and that's because there's a big war thing going on, and they pulled stuff out to save it. So it's all says the same date. It doesn't necessarily mean that's when it actually came into use. Those are the bell strikers from the bell tower in the Palace Museum. So these two guys up there, when you pulled on the thing, they hit the bell. This thing on the lower right is an Armada box from Spain in that time. This is what they carried the treasure in on the Armada ships. They would put it in these big vault boxes and lock them up. I'd never heard of that before. Or saying I've been in a lot of museums. And after you have walked your legs to stumps, what do? You get a little table on the porch right next to the wall and have a cappuccino. And then that night, so we did the tour in the morning, tour in the afternoon. That night we have another event that OET does called home hosted dinner. And you have one of these in there. You go to a family's house and you have dinner with them. Here's our family. Anna is the English speaker in the family. She's 34, has a young daughter, 16. Her mother speaks no English. Okay, so here's an example of, and her father speaks no English thing, but they invited us into their home and she talked for 2 hours straight, telling us about her life, her things, what they do, what she does now, what she can't do, what she doesn't know. The picture in the middle is, that's where we met initially before we went inside the house. This is where we had our what? Rakia. So you show up, the very first thing, you show up, you sit in the smokehouse, you have rakia, and that's the stuff they have put up this fall for the next year in their smokehouse. These are all animals they raised. These are all pigs, pork. The most famous, the most universal dish you see everywhere served, everywhere is prosciutto. And it's awesome. If you see those legs on the big legs, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 legs hanging over there in the bottom, in the top picture there, kind of above her head. Each one of those is probably worth $850 to $1,000 if they wanted to sell them. Each one, $850 to $1,000. That's how much that's worth. That's their year's supply for the family. All this sausage and bacon, and I mean, and then you come out, you go inside, you eat, do the rest of it, and you get back in the ship, and we definitely all smelled like we'd been in the smokehouse a while. On the plate there in the bottom, that's a bin got twisted by the machine, but those are things that we had as appetizers for the meal. Prosciutto, from their prosciutto. Cheese, yep, made their own. That's their cheese. Pickled red pepper, yep. All those 3 things are homemade. They make every year, and they do the things. So, and the prosciutto is to die for. It's unbelievable. And then we had what was going to be an optional tour to this place called Stone, except turned out not to be optional because they skipped Montenegro. So I said, we'll throw this in. So you go there. What do they do in Stone? They harvest salt. So they have big flat beds where they let the seawater in, they dam it up, they let it set, dry it out, collect the salt with rakes, and then they sell it. 70% of the salt that they do is road salt because it's too coarse, too many minerals. 30% is table salt. 1% is sal de mer. Anybody ever heard that term? Sal de mer. Salt of the sea. Now, this is all salt of the sea, but salt of the sea is when it first starts to settle and it really starts to make salt, on the surface of the water will be floating salt leaves. They float, and they're not granules, they're flakes. And they collect those flakes, and those flakes are sal de mer. And they're 1,000 times more expensive than salt. And so they make their real money from this whole operation on the sal de mer. If you bought like a half an ounce, $25 in their shop, really expensive. Bottom right-hand photo there, we're walking into the, ew.
What is it?
taste like when you have it? When you put it?
It's like salt, except that it's not like salt. It's really it's one of these things where you say, what was that? And it's like the reason we use salt, but then we can taste the salt. It brings out the flavor, does the things, totally disappears into whatever it is that you've put it on, but enhances the flavor by a huge amount. And so it's not like it's a great flavor of salt. It's the way it behaves when you put it on food.
Vegetables?
Yeah, the question is various meats. Yes, the answer is everything that you would ever put salt on, you can put this on. But they use it for their best dishes. So if they're making a very special meat dish, they would use this on that for Easter, something. They don't use it every week, every meal. They save it for very special meals, and then they'll use this salt. Other than that, they use the same salt.
Do we have anything like that that's for sale in our?
Yes, the question is, do we have that? You can buy salt and mirror everywhere. Even here, and I'm speaking off thing here because I haven't looked for it. For sure, you can get US made salt and mirror on Amazon, as well as salt and mirror from all over the world on the thing. So it's available everywhere. This is a same city. This is an oyster farm, oyster and mussels, and a vineyard. What a combo. I mean, you can't go wrong. Here we go. But what's the first thing you do? Rakia. So you come in, they give you a rakia. While you're having your rakia, these guys are getting the oysters and the mussels ready, which they just caught that day. So these two guys are shucking oysters just as fast as they can go. And the mussels, they serve steamed with garlic butter. So we have 50 people, 25 of whom would not eat an oyster if you paid them, right? Yes. And so we had lots of oysters and lots of mussels, and they were awesome.
And do they,
They would chop your hand off if they saw you trying to put lemon on one of their oysters. No, that's not true. But we had people, and we had a person ask for hot sauce. The guy said, "You're kidding. Give me that." And no, their point of view is don't mess up the oyster, But we had a lot of people in our group use. They don't really mean it because they serve lemon. Yeah, see, they didn't really mean it that stringently because they served lemon. But they made somewhat of a joke, but they were really serious about hot sauce. No hot sauce. And the oysters and then the bottom right-hand picture is they show us how they do it. They collect the mussels on those nets that you see on the left-hand side of that table. And they're woven kind of, I don't know what they're made out of, hemp. And they just hang those in the water and they collect, and then they leave them there for a while and pull them up. And then once it takes 2 years to get to be a commercial size mussel. So they'll collect them, they collect all these, and then they'll reattach them to a bigger place. And the same thing with the oysters. With oysters, they just hang like a rope, and they'll attach. And they pull the rope up, and then they'll go down and pick out the ones that are big enough and put little ones on and put them back and let them steep long enough to be a good oyster. All right, now we're going to go. This is a town we skipped on the way when we went to Hvar and didn't go to Montenegro. We're going back to Hvar. Island. Not my picture, but that's what it looks like. That's an island. We're on an island. Again, this square here, the main square of Hvar, St. Mark's Square in Venice, is the only one larger in the world than this one. So it's a huge square. And when we were there were 0 people in the square other than us. Venetian castle up on top of the hill, started in 1280. This one we could go in. These pictures are inside this year, so we actually went in this one. This is the fortress up on the hill, a couple of shots of that. This was my favorite part of the fortress up on top of the hill. They had found a Venetian trading ship that had sunk, and they had thousands of these pieces of ceramics and every household good. There was no treasure on the ship. It was all household goods. But you can go through there, and I mean, you could equip 20 houses with all the things they had. It was really amazing to see. This, we couldn't go in this time, but Ginny and I were in it last time. This is the Benedictine convent. Only 7, I don't know how many there were last time. Now there are only 7 active nuns. Of course, that's Saint Benedict. He's the patron saint. Why is this, why do we even care about this one? Because of this. This is the only place in the world these nuns make this lace out of agave fiber. You know, people, we know what agave is, this long things. They strip those out one fiber at a time, and they make this lace out of agave. This piece here is about that wide. It was I took that in a display cabinet in the convent when we were there in 2017. So it's about maybe 10, 12 inches wide, or circular diameter, $400 for that. And they were selling them like that when we were there. Pardon me? Probably 2 years. Yeah, they're doing it now. It's not old. This is not for that much money because it's old. It's that much money because try to figure out how to do that with agave fiber. I'm not sure how you tat lace. Anybody tat lace? Anybody know how to do it? Yeah, I don't know. The question was, how do they do it? Do they use needles or crochet hooks or things? The answer is, I don't know. They did not have any demonstration when we were there years ago. No kind of a demonstration on how they did it. The only thing I've ever seen is somebody give a demonstration on how they collect the fibers out of the agave plants. I have seen that, but that's about it. So what time is it? Oh, middle of the country, all kinds of rock wall. They're known for their wine and their lavender. The whole place is solid rock. So if you look at these walls and these kilns, think how many years it took to collect those rocks and make those walls and do those things. Hvar was the #1 wine producing region in Rome in ancient. When Rome was Rome, Hvar was their #1 wine producing region in that period. So it's been there forever. And now we get to go to what? Yet another vineyard. But it's in this little town called Budhovska. Really picturesque little town. 1,500-year-old 1,500-year-old building. Look like 1,500-year-old people. One more shot of Rakia. Yeah, here we are. What's the first thing you do? You're in a winery. Do you have wine? No. You have a shot?
Cornbread.
It's not. It's just homemade bread. Yeah, just homemade bread. Just homemade white bread. Their white wines were really good. Their red wine stunk in this vineyard. Now we're going to a place called Korcula. We pulled in at about 5 o'clock at night. Of course, sun's down, just like here, 5 o'clock. That was the view out. We had a little balcony about as big as this podium. And that was the view out our balcony when we pulled in, 5 o'clock at night. So really interesting view. Small island, population 4,000 on the whole island. Yeah. Walking tour. Claim to fame, Marco Polo was born here. Nobody knows. That's not true. I mean, maybe true, but it's not a fact. No one knows for sure. But he did live there, and when he finished his travels in 1280, he came back and lived there. That's why they put the story forward that he's from there. So that is a fact, that he came back. I'm sorry to make you stand on your head for some of these photos here. I didn't do it. Look at this. This is crap.
It's a good neck exercise.
Man. This is this year's photos too. This is Regent's Palace Museum. This is one of the best. This is a very small museum, like a kind of big size house type of thing. It had really interesting stuff. How about those vestments? 70 pounds those vestments weighed to put on. You got to be a pretty tough priest to use it. The thing on the lower left is interesting too. It's hard to see, but those are saint, what's the right word for saint? Something, piece of a saint, tooth, nail, relic. Those are saint relics. So in the Middle Ages, 12 and 1300s, it's really important to collect those things and do it. So this is a collection of labeled saint relics that's been there since the 1200s in this place. Afternoon on your own. So the typical deal with these cruises, OAT, or their land tours, you get a walking tour in the morning, the afternoon. This is Ginny and I on our own in the afternoon. Notice how many other people are out there with us from the ship. And you can't go exploring without what? Eating and having rakia and wine and beer. So we stopped at one place open. And this was amazing. We found a place open, so we went. That was the first town of these small ones we'd been to that had anywhere open. So it was open, we went. There were 8 people when we got there, us and 6 locals. 20 minutes after we got there was us. And that was it.
It was raw or they cooked it in that salad?
It's not cooked. No, it's not cooked, but it's got lemon. It's like ceviche, so it's in lemon and lime, and so that cooks it. That was good. Of course, you got to like.
Dogs, cats.
Yeah, nope, us either. In 2 of the towns, we saw cats. I don't remember which towns. 2 of the towns we saw cats because half of the group was more interested in the cat than the 12th century castle. So you remember the cats. And then we're going to this, and this is pronounced Šibenik. Šibenik. The S is S-A, Šibenik. And it's yet another UNESCO World Heritage Site, which we didn't go to because it's on a separate island. That's that fortress on the right. We passed it on the way into town. This is the place with the sea. Oh.
That's the sea organ.
Won't do it. That's the sea organ, and that's the picture of the sea organ. Oh, what have I done? I hope it doesn't keep that up. Oh, what do oh. I got to figure out how to stop that. Oh. Oh. All right. I think we're okay. Let's see. Where's my... I got to go to... we'll keep going. This is the UNESCO World Heritage Site in Šibenik. You could actually go in this one. Church of Our Lady. This was a little Orthodox church that was actually having a service when we were there. And we walked around 15 minutes later. We actually talked to the priest for 5 seconds, I think. Welcomed us in and said, "We're locking the door, leave." So he let us in, took us around for 30 seconds and let us in. Okay, I want to talk about this, and then we have one more little town that probably the best thing we ever did on the whole tour was this. Not these pictures. You can see this is all stuff from Šibenik, pieces, and we're on a driving tour with a private guide. He took us around to these places and to his elementary. He grew up in the town. He took us to his elementary school, his high school, where he went to college, all these kinds of things. And then he took us to his house. And so we spent 3 hours with he and his wife, who's also a tour guide and speaks English, and just talking. And we learned more in 3 hours there than you can learn in who knows how long of traveling. Unbelievable experience. I mean, they look like nondescript pictures, but they're our favorite ones of the whole trip right here. And that's his wife and his son and daughter. And he's been a tour guide for 16 years. They met in Spain. They both speak Spanish. They met, both were leading tours in Spain. Met, came back, met somewhere else, came back, met somewhere else, came back, got married. Their oldest daughter is between 4 and 5. She's not in kindergarten yet. They are not speaking English at home because she will learn English when she enters kindergarten. So they speak only Spanish at home unless her or his father comes over. And then neither one of their wives are still alive. But if either one of those come over, then they speak Croatian. So the only Croatian she hears is when her grandpa comes. Other than that, she only hears Spanish. So Ginny's talking to her in Spanish. You know, and the thing, but I mean, as a private tour. Private tour, yeah. And I told him I want to learn the real Croatia. I want to learn what people do when they don't have tourists, to do that. And he's trying to rack his brain. He says the best thing to do is just come to my house. Okay. So yeah, Croatian and English, but she doesn't know what's going on. No. Yeah. She doesn't know what's going on. But in 2 months or 3 months, when she starts starts kindergarten, then she's going to be 3 languages. Yeah, because she'll get Croatian, she'll get English, she'll get. And I thought, wow, can you imagine that? We can't even speak English. And
Homegrown and pressed olive oil, they do their own?
yeah, they own about 10 acres of land outside the city, and they've got olive trees and grapevines. So they make their own wine, they make their own vinegar, they make their own olive oil, they make their own olives, they make their own cheese, all those things, and they live in a Soviet era apartment complex. Is actually built in the 1980s. His father bought it in the late 1980s. In Yugoslavia, you could buy stuff back then. It was not like the other communist country. You could buy stuff, and his father had enough money that he bought this apartment in the late 1980s. And then throughout the war, things went bad, but then after the war, they got the apartment back. And so he and his wife are in hog heaven because they're one of the few people and families that can actually afford and don't have a house payment. Their house is paid off. So they live very well by Croatian standards. Krka National Park is a waterfall park. Now, keep in mind here it's 23 degrees today, this day. This day we're 23 degrees. Look at this water. That water is where the river is out of its bank. Our tour guides had never seen it this high. All of the walking things are wooden trails, wooden decks. Guess how slippery those are. Look at the power of that thing coming down the side of the mountain. These are, of course, all the water-powered events that went on at the time. They had a mill, they had a fulling machine to pound wool to make it softer. All kinds of operation. That's a washing machine lower left. It's like a commercial washing machine. You bring stuff in, put it in, and it would go in and out of the water and up and down and wash your clothes. And from the start of the entrance to the park till you reach these falls, you have to go around the outside, counterclockwise, down the valley to get below the falls. You start out above the falls. So all those ramps you saw us walking on are across the river above the falls. Then you walk all the way around and down the bottom. And of course, you have to imagine this now where you can't, I'd never be able to talk to you from here because of the noise. Yeah, and this is, at the very bottom. Of course, it's whipped my slides around here, but that's what the impression, and you can't talk. It's so loud. This is we were supposed to, it's a little over 3/4 of a mile around counterclockwise to the bottom of the falls. And we're supposed to go up these, 80 or 90 steps, and we're back up to where the bus is. Except river's overflowing and the water's running 6 inches deep down those steps. So what? 3/4 of a mile back around, so we were some tired Jose's by the time we got back to the bus. But this doesn't show how awesome this view was, this particular one. When you're looking at that water come over the top of the hill and coming down, it looks like there's barely little drizzle on those steps, but it was 4 or 5 inches deep coming down the steps.
You walked up those steps.
No, we turned around and went 3/4 of a mile back. Yeah, we walked around this way. We were supposed to go up the steps. We got to there and said, maybe not. But now there's only one way out, and that's back the way you came. And nobody fell. And that was the amazing thing, because a lot of those places, there was ice everywhere from the water. On the way back to the ship, we stopped at this guy. It's not his place, but he was the only one working. They normally have 6 or 8 people dressed up in their ethnic goods here, and he showed us how people lived in the 1500s. Really, and then, of course, what do? We have prosciutto, rakia, and wine. And his prosciutto was pretty good, too. And his wine was awful. Back to the bus. This is... we're going back into Zadar. It just was snowing like thing. We had a protein snack. And I always try to put one of these in to see what gas prices are. So this was gas prices on the highway on the way back into Zadar. Those are prices. Can you read those? Yeah, that's all you need to know. $1.49, that's for regular 180s premium. It's €1.80, which is a little over $2 a liter. Those are prices per liter. So you're talking about premiums $8 and regular is $6 or $7 for a gallon. So gas is expensive. And then the last place we went is this place called Varazdin, another UNESCO World Heritage Site. The palace is closed, so we couldn't go to the palace. So they had moved a couple hundred of the artifacts out of the palace into this small museum. So we got to see one. The most interesting thing here is this lady right here. Can anybody really see her face? You should take a look. She's not the most gorgeous person that you would ever run into. As a matter of fact, she's got a bigger beard than me. Well, that's the thing. There's a lot of reasons for that, maybe. But that's the thing. She was the most powerful lady in town. And she got married 4 times, and everybody's question was, how? How did she get married 4 times? But this picture, and one of the curator, when he's talking to us, is say, she's wearing more wealth than anybody else in the whole region had in this picture. So who knows how much else she had. But this brooch is probably worth, or brooch, more than anybody else in the whole country had at the time. And then all of her other jewelry, and then this the clothing she has on. It was a look how rich I am picture. More stuff. The chessboard is kind of cool. That chessboard is 4 inches by 4 inches. Yeah, so it doesn't look like much in this picture. But imagine that. That whole chessboard is that big. So it's pretty amazing when you see it. It's called the City of Angels, and they have this one street that's, you would have to walk like this. And that's where the angels, the only place in town that has angels. More pictures, kids on a snow hill. That's the palace, the white building, lower right. Of course, what do you do when you walk for 2 hours? Cappuccino. And yet another vineyard. More rakia, more prosciutto, more cheese. And then on the way back, we're on the bus ride back to Zagreb, and we leave the next morning at 5:30 for the airport. That's the sunset. Finally, he's done. So, any questions? Yo. Rakia is typically about 25% alcohol, so about 50 proof. The flavored stuff, the cherry things and the things like that are less. They're down around 15, 18%, like strong wine. Their alcohol content's like strong wine. Their red wines are really strong, 16, 17%. You can't do that in the US without calling them fortified wines. You can't have wine that high alcohol content. So their wines are, some of the maraschino, for instance, that's, I forget what it was, something like 32%. So it's 60, 70 proof. It was pretty strong. Yeah.
In all of your travels, have you met people, either passengers or tour guides, that you still keep in touch with?
Yeah. The question is, have you met tour guides or people you can touch with? And the answer is yes. And it's both people and tour guides. And it's not an every month or everything, but at least Christmas cards type of thing, this kind of thing. Or I'm Facebook friends with 8 or 10 of them. And so we do trade Facebook comments. Oh man, it looks like you're doing this, doing that. So yeah, we have short list, 10, maybe 10.
Phones like we do. I mean, the phones in their country like we do.
Question is, do they have phones? And the answer is better than ours. That you find that in Europe, and especially Northern Europe, the Baltics, and on down, and it's coming to Croatia, they don't use money anymore. They don't use credit cards. Everything's your phone. Everything you do, everything you know, all your money is on your phone. So you go to check out, beep, and that's it. And you check out, and yeah, well, that's true, but that's the way it's going there. Now, they still have the ability to use cash because there's a segment of the population, but the trend is phones, and they rely on their phones as a total community much more than we do. Yeah. Get to her first.
Winter was cold and stormy on the boat?
Question is, in winter, was it stormy on the boat or cold? The answer is no. It was, we had one day, and this is why we changed our thing. We had one day with about 4 to 6 foot waves. 4 to 6 foot waves for that boat's a big wave. On a big cruise ship, you wouldn't even know that there was a wave, with a 6 foot wave. So we did have one rough day. We had a couple, 3 days where you could actually go, it was okay to sit outside because it wasn't cold enough that you couldn't sit outside on the top. The rest of the day is too cold.
With your acquaintances on your trips, okay, have they ever visited you too here in
No, but we've not here, but we have met them at places in the US.
It'd be interesting to have, if the occasion would ever and they could probably do it here at ALL, okay, have a.
Oh, have somebody like that come and talk or do something?
Well, and kind of expect, share their experiences with you and them.
Yeah.
Let's say this couple or whoever they are.
Yeah.
Be,
And the question is, do they ever come here? And the answer is no, not here. But we have met people in cities. When we lived in Texas, we've gone to Dallas, we've gone to San Antonio, where people were in visiting a big city, and we'd go to them. They didn't. We lived in a place there was no reason for them to come to visit, and we have gone to them and done that.
Here's a little way.
Oh man, another one?
Thank you, Rock.
Oh man. Oh, I love these things.
Yes.
I'm sorry to keep you.